So this is Life, and I'll be your concierge. Today we have a very special guest in the house. We've got Darren Campher, who is a political activist, a trader, a speaker, a consultant. Damn, what doesn't this man do? Darren Campher.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, my brother. Absolutely. Thanks for trusting me with your time and for taking time out of your busy schedule. You obviously have a lot going on.
A little bit.
I've been wanting to have this conversation with you because I think it will be firstly getting to know who you are, but then also just the controversial, heated things that, people might say about you. People don't really actually know you as a person, and I want to get into that as much as you'll allow me. Okay. But then also, just into some of your views that have sparked a bit of talk around town. So let's start with the background, Darren. Where are you from?
So I actually grew up in the southern suburbs of the city. Most of my family and me, I lived there for a little while in Manenberg.
Okay.
Kind of moved around in the south, Manenberg, Surrey Estate, little part of Hanover Park called Penati Estate, Athlone as well. So most of my life I spent in the south, and then when we were a bit older, moved out into the north. So pretty much born and bred Cape Townian.
Okay, fully, man. And your background in terms of studies, what did you study?
I studied business. I actually studied at a no-fee business school. It was no-fee at the time, called Tsiba Tertiary School in Business Admin.
Yeah.
Was fortunate enough to get a bursary and studied business. It was one of those study what's there to study. It was free, so, took it and kind of ran from it with went into investments, went into insurance, eventually event management. Ran a catering company for a little while. Very hard work.
Yeah.
Spent some time in a call center even.
Outbound, inbound?
Inbound.
Inbound, okay.
Yeah, the rough one.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
that's a lot of just customer service to...
Yeah, it was at Amazon actually.
Was it on Amazon? Okay.
Yeah, it was at Amazon. All the friends who know me from Amazon, hi. And then went off into my own business from there. So it was quite a bouncing around trajectory.
And that's when you went straight into trading from catering?
So when I was studying business, one of the courses was an investments course I did with ASISA, Associations for Saving and Investment South Africa. So I did a course with him as part of my degree. And so I was exposed to the asset management industry, did a year in asset management, and kind of just stuck with it from then. And so it was kind of always something running in the background, learning a bit about trading, trying to do it for myself, seeing what I was exposed to when I was in the business. And so in 2019, from 2018 into 2019, I took it on for myself and then went full-time in 2019.
And how does that, obviously you have to split up your day quite strategically, right? Because the political activism, the human rights activism, plus being a trader, plus being a consultant and speaker, how do you have a team that works with you?
I do. I have somebody who pretty much holds my hand in terms of everything IT. Most of my things for content creation, I get not maybe content creation specifically, but I have quite a group of people who are always pushing information my way. Some of them are MPs, some of them are content creators themselves. So I get a nice flood of information coming to me to help me do research.
Okay. Yeah. And how do you find the trading space? Because it's something that I've been trying to delve into for some time, but I find it hard personally. How did you it seems like you, to a certain extent, self-studied, learned how to trade on your own?
Yeah. It's a very new space.
Yeah.
I think pretty much since the internet came about, retail trading started to enter. It's still new, and even finance as a whole, there's not a lot of really comprehensive information for the user. Even if we talk about your insurance policy, like how much you actually know about your insurance policy.
Yeah, we just sign.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the same thing happens in the trading space, where people sit with a monopoly on the knowledge, and then they kind of just feed you what they want to get you.
There's always some that do very, very well, and there's others who seem to struggle to get by in this space.
Yeah, so there's quite a bit of information now, but as you say, once you, like I was saying earlier, trading is not actually the difficult part. It's managing yourself.
Okay.
Because once you learn that, which is going to sound weird, but I'm going to say it anyway. Once you learn that you can make money just between yourself and the market, it's its own kind of drug.
Yeah.
And you realize that there's no cap on how much you can make. And there are companies out there who will offer you big amounts of money to trade with if you can meet certain criteria. People's eyes kind of just blow up. And then it goes haywire. So most of the time, people who do really well in trading are women because they have a lower kind of leaning towards risk, and then students because they're really young and they might not have as much financial responsibility as somebody who's a bit over, so they just learn the skill for the sake of learning the skill.
Yeah.
So the people who do better are sometimes the people who are a bit more relaxed about it. And the people who are very aggressive, they do badly. So I'm not the best trader I know. Lots of my students do better than I do.
Would you liken it to gambling in a big way sometimes? Because I feel like a lot of people, like you said, your emotions play a big part in whether or not you continue. Because some people might get like a big score, they get a lot of money, and then they decide to like double down or go harder without, and they should probably pull out at that stage or just play more cautiously.
I think there's a component of it that brings a gambling tendency out of people, and it can become that where people tend to just, they make it once, they don't know how they did it, and then it's just YOLO, we're going to throw whatever money we can in savings. I've had, it is even so bad, I had one student who just got married, wife was pregnant, and he was like, I'm going to go for it. And I was like, please don't. I was like, please keep demo trading, just keep practicing on the, you know what I mean? It's real market conditions, but not real money. I was like, keep practicing, and I couldn't talk him out of it.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a component of gambling. Yeah, quickly.
Big time.
Like a few weeks after.
Jeez.
And so there's definitely a component that brings the gambling nature out of people. But there's also a component that's very real because people have been trading for decades. For a very, very, very long, people have also been gambling for a long time. Yeah. But people have been trading the financial markets for a very long time and making careers out of it. And so you need to look at what they're doing and not just somebody who's struck it lucky.
Yeah.
So I actually don't, like you'll see on my social media platforms, I don't talk about trading a lot. I kind of just work with my students and mind my business.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for a trader also, I assume you have to always be watching not just the markets, but like news, because that all of that influences stock markets. You know, like a war might be going on over here. All of a sudden, everything plummets, which would on the other side of the planet serve somebody who knows that something's about to go down there.
Once you get to a certain point, it really becomes so part of your life. Nobody who knows me now sees me actively trading.
Yeah.
You just see me like looking at my phone, and when I'm sitting behind my computer, it just looks like I'm doing normal stuff, because and that's what I encourage for my students to do. I was like, do it in the time that you check your phone or check your laptop. It's not supposed to be like another job. It's like eating. You do it a few times a day and then
leave it alone.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what I encourage. I don't encourage this like Wolf of Wall Street craziness. Like it's not real.
Because a lot of the guys I know that do it, they like sit through the night. And they like, I think that's a level of addiction maybe. Like.
No, it's a lie. Even if you, and I've been in a few asset management companies, and when you go to like the floor where the portfolio managers are there, they're reading. You know, it depends. You can do what you want to do with it.
Okay. And that's the mainstream of income. Trading and consultancy and speaking.
Yeah. There's a mix. I also don't trade all the time. I trade sometimes, then I make some money, and then I leave it alone. Because like I said, I'm not the best trader I know.
Yeah.
Some of my students trade better than me, more consistently than me. Some of them make more money than me. Like I think, like there was a 19-year-old kid I made a video about. So look, for me, it was a process. I studied for a 4-year degree, did an investments course, worked in assets management, worked in insurance, did a few other people's courses, and then eventually got it. This bloody... He started with me in May.
Yeah.
By November, he was managing an account with a prop trading firm.
Sheesh. Damn.
Yeah.
So there's no age to it, like in terms of how well you can do. It's just like an emotional,
legally
like
you
EQ.
Can, legally you can only open a broker's account when you're 18.
Yeah.
But in terms of how well people perform, I've worked with people from the age of 17 all the way up till 62.
Wow.
And there's no formula except for that general trend. But like you can't say by looking at somebody, some people who are very, very smart, very educated, done horribly. Because nothing to do with their level of education, all to do with self-control.
Interesting.
Which is why I'm not.
Yeah. And now your social media content, right? Obviously you're a social media creator. And this is one of the big reasons why I wanted to speak to you. And I think this might be a good time to cheers. Because,
yeah, here we go.
Cheers, my brother. I think I'm going to need a sip of whiskey for this.
Go for it.
Because your views and your takes on life is obviously, you can tell that when I first saw your videos, I was very fascinated by you because I can see that you're well read and you actually do your work. You're not like the typical person on social media, just kind of spewing things heard around the braai on a weekend and believing everyone by virtue of what they've been discussing. And then you get into some group agreement because everybody thinks this.
The braai bakskinder.
You know what I'm saying? So you're one of the brave ones, and I do consider you quite brave because what you're doing is actually speaking your truth. And it could obviously rub a lot of people up the wrong way. In fact, this interview for me could actually it could not do well for me
we'll find out.
Either. You know, I guess we'll find out. But your take on politics and or let's start by your love for politics and your love for, I guess, social injustices and becoming an activist. Where did that start?
I was always exposed to people who were either involved with the community or who were part of the community who needed help, or I was one of those people who needed help. There's always, like, as a black or colored person, you're never too far away from somebody who's barely making it, if you're not the person who's barely making it. And so I've always grown up with a sense of accountability for people around me. So I don't love politics, but I do love the people it impacts.
Yeah.
And there's a genuine concern for the people it impacts because I think the conversation around politics always becomes very technical and very semantic. But there's real people behind it.
Yeah.
Like real individuals. And I think sometimes we forget that. And so because I grew up in both worlds, I am privileged enough to have the conversation from the technical, political, economic side, and also have a lot of passion behind it because, like, it's my literal family, friends, their family and friends. Like when a hospital closed down in Manenberg, it affected people I knew.
Yeah.
When they cut funding to a school, it affected people I knew. And so, not to say that that's the only time you should care, but it made it very, very real for me. And so my push into the political side of things, I suppose it was always going to get there.
I think also for people of color, naturally we come from a lineage of the injustices around what happened to our parents, for example. I think if you're any person of color in South Africa, you know, your parents' homes were taken away at a certain time. Everybody was kind of scattered around the Cape Flats, and you know, I grew up in a household, you know, dad was earning 3,000 rand a month as an electrician, mom was a bookkeeper, and we lived in Bellagio at the time, and I think sometimes that, I think for me, is what wakes up. It's something inside of you, because some of them, they just move on in a way, but we kind of hang on to that because there's systemic things that happen down the line that gets passed on to the kids. And obviously, so do you think that that's something that also like maybe woke something up in you, is like just the injustices of the past?
We can definitely see how the previous generation, our parents specifically, respond to that trauma, and how in some instances they are very tired to continue fighting because they've done quite a bit.
They don't even want to hear about it anymore, actually.
That's I can understand. We're talking about people who had grown up through the most traumatic times of our country, and they don't even, you know, black and colored parents don't talk about therapy. Yeah.
So no, it's not even a thing.
I'm not surprised that they don't want to talk about it, because I don't think they have very often, I don't think they were fortunate enough to have the tools to cope.
Yeah. If I bring up therapy at home, it's like, why? Who do you want to speak to for what? You can talk to me. Talk to the Lord. Which I but it's like, you know, like there are people out there that are trained to help us.
So no, it wasn't. I can see why they don't want to have conversations sometimes about the past and just want to move on, like you said.
Yeah. You've been very vocal about, you've been going over many political parties' manifestos and kind of, I haven't seen you like particularly push out a certain party that you vote for, but I think you've just been pushing out a lot of manifestos of the different parties and saying, here they are, choose for yourself.
Yeah.
Right? So...
yeah, I get that question every day, multiple times a day, like who should we vote for? And I don't answer the question.
Yeah.
I am biased towards a certain type of party.
Yeah.
And that's very obvious because I'm going to be biased towards any party whose policies are going to benefit the majority. So capitalist policies don't benefit the majority. They benefit people who have either large amounts of cash or assets or access to it. So that's a no-brainer. We're the most unequal country on the planet. The conversation about capitalism shouldn't be had anymore. We won first prize.
And with the highest unemployment rates, apparently.
So we've won the capitalist game show. So I don't know. It's very confusing, especially in a South African context where people say like, can't you see all capitalism's done for us?
Yeah. But why are we so scared to talk about these things though? Me included. Like I kind of have always stayed clear of politics and just things that might rub people the wrong way. Because I think we are so naturally polite as a people in South Africa. We don't like pushing buttons, I think, in public or...
We've been taught not to.
Yeah.
We've been taught not to. It's the same reason why when you walk down an aisle, let's say in Checkers, Woolworths, Pick n Pay, doesn't matter. Watch yourself and watch who you move out of the way for and who you don't move out of the way for.
100%.
Watch how you conduct yourself to make yourself not a hindrance or to make people around you comfortable.
Yeah.
It's just how we were brought up. It's one of those things that maybe this is not the best comparison, but how do you know when you go to the men's bathroom, how do you know not to stand at the urinal right next to a guy?
When not to do it.
Yeah, like when you go to the bathroom, right? Yeah. We all know it's the unwritten rule. You don't stand next to the urinal right next to somebody. You leave a space and use the one next to it, right?
Yes.
How do you know that?
I guess, I don't know.
Exactly. And it's the same way we grew up moving out of the way. It's the same way we grew up not to speak about politics.
Yeah.
Because you're socially conditioned to not question the narrative why things are the way they are.
Yeah, we don't want to ruffle the feathers in any way.
Because we're just trying to meet our basic needs. So there's no room in that space to put anything at risk. There's no room for that. There's just, you can't have a conversation, or it's very difficult to have a conversation with somebody about owning space and having difficult conversations when you are just barely hanging on to everything.
Yeah.
So it goes from small, silly things like how you conduct yourself in a mall to the conversations you're willing to have publicly or not have publicly. And that's how certain lies or misconceptions or misinformations about how society works is allowed to perpetuate because nobody questions it. And when you do question it, it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. What year were you born, man? What's your age?
91.
91. I don't know, millennial. I mean, same. But I think we are kind of, I was 86, but we are kind of, like you said, conditioned into getting out of the way for certain people, or certain people make us feel more anxious than others. Like we need to elevate quickly and be, on guard constantly. I want, like, what do you think the solution will be to? I think it starts with a consciousness, and is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah, it was something Steve Biko was pushing since his time. And he was always talking about black consciousness, and he was always talking about owning your space and owning where you are and being who you are and doing introspection to discover who that is. It starts with conversations like these. It starts with information. So you'll notice on social media, sometimes people can just say things. I think just say things and it will run like wildfire.
Yeah.
I have a reference almost every time for everything I say behind me.
Yeah.
Because my credibility and what I say is always questioned.
Yeah.
And if there's ever an instance where I don't put it behind me, or I don't put a reference there, or I don't put it in the link, it's like, you're just making stuff up. Can't possibly be.
So you always need proof behind you, evidence.
And so part of like you say, breaking into that mindset is to, for me at least, to have information behind everything I say, so that when somebody hears it and I say, you shouldn't actually be poor. There's nothing wrong with you as an individual. There's nothing wrong with how hard you've worked. You've not done anything wrong. This whole system is meant to keep you poor because it benefits somebody. And I back that with information.
Yeah.
Like that's actually true. Because people have a genuine lack of self-worth when they grow up in poverty, thinking that they did something wrong, not realizing that wage theft is a normal part of how society is constructed.
What is wage theft?
So let's say I run a business, right? I have 20 people working for me. I pay them 3,000 Rand a month. I take 10 hours a day of their time. So most of their waking hours, they spend working for me, right? I only pay them 3,000 Rand a month. They can't meet their basic needs, but I make profit, right? I upgrade my car, upgrade my house, send my kids to private school. I get
Which
some
is the
savings.
basic condition. That's what happens.
Right, the whole 9 yards. So my profits that I'm using to elevate my lifestyle while they can't meet their basic needs, that's their money I'm stealing, isn't it? Because they've earned that money. They've earned the profits, but I've taken it because legally I can.
Yeah.
And that's wage theft. And that's how South Africa's gotten to where it is now.
Is that why we are so unequal in, like you said, South Africa is one of the most unequal, or is the most unequal country in the world.
Yeah.
Because also I was reading an article about a mine. Said mine is out there in the northwest or whatever, and the CEO of this mine makes 360 million Rand a year, and I think the mine workers wanted 1,000 Rand increase, and he said he cannot succumb to their demands.
No.
So
because legally you can say no.
Yeah, and I don't know if they did, but that is kind of it angers me to know that, you know, people are working so hard. These are the people on the front line going into the shafts every day. All they want is 1,000 Rand extra a month, while the big boss is earning 360 million Rand a year.
So this is part of the mindset that needs to be broken, because those miners feel like, or might feel like, they are poor miners, right? What happens to the resources that they're mining? How much money is made off that?
Yeah.
Once it's processed, who's making money off that? They're the first level of this resource that's making people so much money along the way, but we look at the miner as...
Yeah.
You see, and that's how we get taught, and that's how we get indoctrinated. And so when you want to break into that mindset and the black consciousness, we need to think about what happens to our labor. So if we talk about people who should at the very least, the bare minimum, have their basic needs met. I think of people like miners, cleaners, nurses, social workers, teachers. These are people who without them, society would just crumble. But we pay them the least. Yeah. Because legally...
If you think about all these things are coming out of the earth, like the country that we live in, like it should be seeing to our basic, you know, to our everyday people. Like, and what is your take on like the nationalizing of mines and things that kind of are in the hands of the...
So one of the things that Gaddafi did in Libya before he was murdered by the West, as usual, I think it was oil. One of the resources was oil. He paid the profits from oil directly into citizens' bank accounts.
Wow.
Because he felt that the oil was laying under the ground here. It doesn't belong to any one individual person. So pay the profits to them. If they wanted to go study, the state would pay for them to go study as long as you came back and you used your education.
But do you feel like we're too far gone though? Like these things should have been addressed post-democratic South Africa. When, you know, obviously when the ANC came into power for the first time, like these type of conversations were obviously swept under the rug. And now, as South Africans do, we kind of sit with the resentment of all these things now without processing our trauma, and we've just kind of moved on and said, okay.
We're not there yet. I think we're still in the process. We don't realize how young of a democracy we are. Like you just said, our parents are tired. Yeah. So we need to pick up the slack. And so I think the first, or one of the phases of decolonization was like, hey, you can't take land from us anymore just because you feel like it, and you can't shoot us in the streets.
Yeah.
Can we agree? Okay, we agree. Now we need to do the systemic things.
Yeah.
I don't think we've just made. I think we look at 1994 as this black and white line, and it's not. It's this gray area that we need to be moving past.
Okay.
And so what I encourage people to do is to stop having the conversation as if 1994 was this
Big change.
Do you know what I mean? It was a event in our process of decolonization.
Yeah.
So nationalization of state resources, or the land, for example, is one of those conversations. And now you can see how I'm biased towards a certain party.
Yeah.
Because not all political parties want to nationalize. I don't know, like, if we took majority of this country and said, hey, we're going to take the profits from this mines and pay it into everybody's bank account, everybody's going to get a piece. Only the wealthy are going to have a problem with that.
Yeah.
The poor.
And the wealthy is so small. They're such a small group. But
the top 10% of the country have 85% of the wealth.
yeah,
The remaining 90% are living on 15%.
that's wild.
Yeah.
And people, our tax money is what's kind of paying for, because some are also like the wealthy have a way of not paying tax, right? Through their business, they have a way of like kind of
Evading
skillfully
tax. Yeah.
and legally evading tax. So I don't know if their money actually ends up in our economy anyway, which makes is it true to say that the bulk of the responsibility is then on the middle class?
So you can decide how technical you want to get here, but so one of the processes that the wealthy use is the stock exchange, which is why you'll notice I don't trade securities. So what they'll do is, when a company goes public, they offer the shares up to the public, and then those shares are purchased.
Yeah.
But most of those shares are purchased through asset management companies, where everybody's pensions are and all those good things,
Yeah.
right? So who makes the decisions at the asset management companies on which shares to buy? The wealthy, isn't it? Who work in those asset management companies,
sure.
or own those asset management companies.
Yeah.
And then the shares get purchased using our pension funds and everybody else's to fund the same companies owned by the same types of people.
Yeah.
And so that money just gets cycled perpetually.
Yeah.
And so there's a few ways to evade tax, but one of them is to just keep money in the terms in the form of shares, and then you only really get taxed when you have when you want to withdraw them, and then you pay capital gains tax. But you can take debt out in the form of shares because they're an asset in the meantime. Yeah. But it's basically, I have shares, buy these shares from me. Value of shares go up. You're the asset manager. You benefit because the share value goes up. I'm the business owner. I benefit because you bought my shares. The value of my shares have gone up. And you can just create this fake balloon of value using the public money.
Dear Mom, you're my best friend, okay? You're the funniest person I met in the whole world. But you're so bad at hide and seek. You do make the best brownies though. I love it when we go riding together. When I'm older, I want to be pretty like you. Happy birthday, Mom.
So the whole system is rigged.
Yeah.
Like, and it's so tough to get ahead in this world, especially as a person of color. Because, I mean, I can speak for myself too. Like, I mean, I did everything. There was a time I thought, damn, I really did everything that was expected of me, right? I went to like a Model C high school. After that, I studied finance. Okay, I dropped out of my honors in finance. But then I went straight into looking for a job. And for 2 years after that, I couldn't find work, right? And then I went and I did other things, tried other businesses, nothing worked. And then at the end of like, say, mid-2018 again, like I think I came back from LA and I had a bit of a go there. But I found it very hard to get ahead as a person of color. Like, it's kind of like you did everything that you needed to do. You almost start sympathizing, and I say this cautiously, but like with people in the hood that I grew up with, you can see why gangsterism starts and all of this. Because I mean, people try their best to get out, and just like nothing works, you know, unless you have like mom and dad at home that knows this and that person and the connections to get you up the corporate ladder. But with me, I couldn't find work. Every boardroom I sat in, interviewed with, they're going to go with a UCT student who has family connections, or the Stellenbosch student. you know, and not with a UWC student.
I think sometimes people think crime is fun. Like they think people get into crime and gangsterism because, you know, vibes.
Yeah.
I And so you're asking a question about the middle class.
Yeah.
I have very, very, very little patience for the middle class.
Yeah.
I have very few middle class friends because they can't stand me.
Mm.
Because I believe that if you are privileged enough to be in the middle class, you need to be speaking for the people who are the working class and advocating for them. And I believe that if you're not, you're a traitor. Like we probably.
Why
not
do you
gonna
say
get
that?
along.
Do you find that the middle class, obviously, they're trying to be upper class, but they'll never reach there.
No.
But is it like a bas, ya bas, near bas?
The middle class are closer to the working class than the wealthy.
They are.
They just think that they're not. And I can back this up statistically. Like there's such a small fraction of the economy. Most of us are working class. And then there's a nice, even smaller wealthy. And then the middle class is just like the, you know, the token.
Yeah.
Maybe one day you can at least
Yeah.
meet your basic needs.
Yes.
Middle class is how we lower our standards. Like you can have a house.
You can have a
You can have a house. You can have a place to sleep.
Yes.
Not even sometimes. Sometimes you can have this hotel living style that we call renting.
Yeah.
Isn't that bizarre?
Yeah.
That like your whole life you might be renting, you're going to pay. If I were to tell
You
you,
might have a roof over your head.
if I were to tell you, there's a hotel that's offering a place to stay, pay for it for the rest of your life, and then your kids are also going to pay to rent, and then their kids are also going to pay to rent, you'd be like, oh, you're nuts. You're like, why would you live in a hotel? That's renting.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that Thomas Sankara, by the way, ended before he was also killed by the same people who killed Gaddafi.
Yeah.
He eliminated the rental market. Everybody who's paying must have a house.
Yeah.
If you're spending money, you must spend money to buy a house. This whole thing of the rental market must be, and this is the kind of thing that our society doesn't want. What do you mean you want to eliminate the rental market? You know how much money people make off the rental market? You know how many people are homeless?
Yeah.
You know how many people are spending half to a third of their salary on renting?
Who are the people that make the most money off the rental market?
People that look like my palm. More than 70% of land is owned by white people.
More than 70%.
More than 70%. They're 8% of the population.
They are 8% of the population of South Africa, and they own
more than 70% of the land. They also represent more than 70% of top management in businesses. On the JSE, we are 80% black country. 80% black. On the JSE, I think they are 2% of the companies on the JSE are completely black owned.
And yet, the people that look like the inside of your palm right now are saying that
BE is killing us.
Yes, and then our kids don't have work and they all want to move
the
abroad
problem is I read.
and they don't have...
You remember the Braaiback
because the life has
conversation?
changed a lot for them, they say. It's not
Yes.
They miss
you
the
had
old
to go
days.
from private to Model C.
Yeah, they had to, you know.
This is the middle class I'm talking about, who I consider traitors. And they don't necessarily have a color, but often they do.
Yeah. Wild. Because I even speak for myself as somebody who works in the arts, right? It's so hard. Like what I like about Nigeria and what they're doing is when you want to work or shoot any campaign in Nigeria, you have to use Nigerian artists. You have to use Nigerian models for commercials. You can't bring in your own. And I feel like I've been like, at first I started in the modeling industry in 2009, and then I became an actor around 2010. And it was so hard, like around times of like our season, our one time that we get to work, right? Which is between like say October and March. Because now all of a sudden all the international models come in to South Africa. And now they prioritize them. They prioritize the European models, the Brazilian models, the American models, Canadian models, who are going to take money out of our economy and go home at the end of season. And then we only start working once they've kind of left. Because now South African models have... Don't you think we should also like, you know, I've always thought that we should do the same things that Nigeria does. Like, take care of our own first.
So one of the policies that Hlaudi Motsoeneng implemented on SABC was 90% local artists on radio. He was also the same person in an interview recently, I also posted it, where he said for a cleaner, 15,000 Rand a month, nothing less than that. People thought he was crazy. SABC did fine. There are people who advocate for these things in our country, but they get snuffed out very often. If you think back to a few years, you'll know he was vilified for a lot of his actions. He's like, he's ruining the SABC. You wanted 90% local people on radio. What's sabotage?
What's so wrong with that? like we have this tendency to not take care of our own people. Like we put everybody else, the West, we put them on a pedestal like they know better. Like I always think that, you know, as much as we are always like blaming or pointing fingers at like black leaders, for example, but I do believe that on top of a black leader is a minority of the West of white men that are also still pulling the strings, because there's a small group of white men that run the country, but the faces of it is probably like, let's say, call it the ANC.
I think they enable a lot of...
Do you agree with that?
So I made a video recently about MP salaries. And I think the highest paid MP would be the president, who made about 4 million. And then I went over to the private sector. And I was talking about the top 10 people in the private sector. And I think the highest paid salary in the private sector was around 600 million a year. No, 300 million a year.
I think it's that mine I spoke about earlier.
Right. So we're talking about 100 times more. Right. And in my comment section of the same video I made, people were still focused on the president's salary. And I was like, we're talking about somebody who's employing thousands of people, and he's paying them not paying them a livable wage, and he's making 100 times what your president makes, and you still focus. And that's the narrative that we get fed.
I see there's a certain group under fire in Australia now as well for doing that type of thing.
I'm not sure. I haven't heard of it.
A retail company that's name starts with a W. That is a big retail group in South Africa.
I see. I'm not surprised.
And they are under fire right now for paying ridiculously low wages, while the CEO over there is making, I don't know, 100 million plus.
Yeah. But on what you were saying about the ANC, I think they have enabled and watched a lot of what's happened. So honestly, I'm less concerned with what the politician pays themselves and more concerned with what they allow to happen to constituents. Like, but I really don't care if you want to buy yourself a Mercedes. Can you make sure that the hospitals are functional?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't care if you want to send your kid to a school where they feed him caviar. I really can't care. But can you make sure everybody has a house?
Yeah.
You know, I think that's like our standards are very low as a people, and even those aren't being met.
Yeah.
So I think I'm more upset about what the ANC has enabled under their watch than what they've taken for themselves.
Yeah. Like I always say, I don't hate the ANC. I know like I've made a couple of posts about them now leading up to the elections, but I really don't hate them. But I love them enough to say go and rest for 4 years. You guys can pick it up in 4 years when you come back fresh. I think they've gotten a little bit lazy.
5 years.
Is it 5?
I've had a conversation with a few ANC MPs. I actually did an interview with one, and I actually told him, the path of least resistance would just be that you get your stuff together.
Yeah.
You're already everywhere. You have the infrastructure there. You have the people. All you need to do is do the stuff properly. Because I've read the ANC manifesto. I've spoken about the ANC manifesto, and it was the most frustrating one to read because it's like you're offering all the things we know we need.
Yeah.
We know we need this. You know we need this. These are good things in the manifesto. Yeah. Why haven't you done it? It's because they don't.
That's why I'm calling out the laziness, because I'm like, you guys can.
So that's part of the narrative.
Is it lazy, or is it just like they've complacency?
We have brilliant people. I am by a long shot not one of the smartest people you can find in politics or economics or in the social sphere. We have brilliant people. If you think I'm good at what I do, you should speak to the people I speak to. There's the lie we get told is that there's this incompetence, right? But we study with very smart people. We have conversations with very smart people who are in these circles, and when you have conversations with them, they all say the same things. They're like, they don't want to.
Yeah,
they don't want to, and that's it. I have a mentor. I had a mentor and a friend and a family friend who passed away recently. And one of the things that he told me was if they wanted to, they would have done it.
But why don't they want to then?
How much would I have to pay you to look away from somebody else's poverty?
So monopoly capital.
Yeah, but how much would I have to pay you?
What, to look away? It depends who you, I mean, for me.
Do you know what I mean? So if I were to convince you that nothing you do is going to change what's happening to those poor people, right? How much would I have to pay you to just, like, listen, you're not going to help them. The best you can do is for your own family.
Yeah. I'd like to think I can't be bought, but
But do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And that's the
get you.
reality that our politicians are faced with. And
Yeah.
I'm not making excuses for them.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, if you can be convinced that, hey, for 400 years, you haven't won this game. Since we got here, you haven't won this game. In every colonized country, you haven't won this game. People think America's a white country. They completely forget about Native Americans. So if somebody can convince you, just look after your family, brah.
Yeah.
Don't do this to yourself.
Yeah.
At least you can be wealthy. At least for a few generations, maybe your whole lineage, you can be wealthy. But the majority, it's never going to happen. And that's what happens. People sell out. But I think we think of selling out as like this cheap version of things. And it's not that. It's that you convince somebody to give up on hope. And there's a reason that people like Chris Hani and Steve Biko were murdered, because they gave people hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
They gave people hope that the majority can be beneficial. It's the same reason they killed Sankara. It's the same reason they killed Gaddafi. It's because they looked out for the majority and they were unapologetic about it. And when you do that, you have a problem. It's the same reason people hate unions. Because when you give the majority the power to speak for themselves, now you have a problem. As long as I can speak for you, I can control you. But if all of you speak for yourselves, I have a problem.
Damn.
Yeah. It's and this is not politics. This is life. This is the reality we face. And so we kind of throw the umbrella of politics over it. But it's how society is shaped.
Yeah. But now you get all these parties that are springing up, obviously Cape Town and is kind of perceived as different to the rest of South Africa, because this is like post-apartheid. This is like one country, or I call it a country already. It's like one city that is like kind of remained its own thing, where those who were happy before remain happy, and I find everything in between is not taken care of. The places that we grew up in, the middle, the suburbs, has either stayed the same or gone down. The informal settlements has gotten bigger. The Atlantic seaboard has gotten better, and Stellenbosch remains green and lush.
Cape Town must be one of apartheid's biggest success stories. The first time I went to Joburg, it was just a culture shock to me. I was like, wow, everything is so like integrated. Everything is, you can go out and not feel the same kind of energy you feel in Cape Town. Yeah. Where when you go out, you need to watch yourself. You need to check where you are, how you can talk. There's less of that in Joburg. I think it's the reason Joburg was hated by even Eugene Blanche for so long. It was one of the things he said when he was trying to divvy up the country. He was like Joburg, no, the cosmopolitans, they can have it. He didn't want it, wasn't interested. He wanted Cape Town. Because Cape Town has always been such a good template for spatial apartheid and inequality. It's always been like the perfect little pilot project from the time of the Cape Colony.
So I'm sure then you love parties like Cape Independence. That
run by a British foreigner.
That's what I'm saying. Like, listen, I'm all for different parties and their own. But then I was like, okay, let me just listen to this Cape Independence guy and let's give him a go, because I do feel like Cape Town, for certain things that I see or that they show us, it does look nice and clean and less potholes and this. And then I listened to this guy speak and he had a British accent. And then I was like, nah, fam. Like, we are trying to, that's further segregation. That's not unity.
He's a very interesting character. I was on a live with him once on Twitter, on a Twitter space. And then I asked him what his background was, his like qualifications. Nothing in politics, nothing in economics, nothing in business, right? He has no university degree.
Really?
By the way. And then I asked him,
what's his name again?
Phil Craig.
Okay.
And then I asked him, okay, so he's against VEs, against land reform, pro-Israel, the whole 9 yards.
He wants everything to be as they are.
So I asked him, so you have no political experience, no experience in economics. He considered himself a moderately successful business person. And I said, you started a political party like that you want people to vote for. Then his answer was that no, they're a single issue party. All they want is for a referendum to happen. I said, okay. So He said he only exists because the DA promised a referendum and he didn't give it. So I said, okay, so you're saying you just starting a political party to get a referendum to happen and then you're done. I was like, okay, so who do you then want to give power over to? He said, to the DA. I said, the same DA that didn't want to give you a referendum. So I said, the party that didn't want to give you a referendum because they don't want the mandate of running a province on its own as a country, you want to give the mandate to run a province on its own as a country. So yes. So, okay.
Hectic.
So I had this conversation on Newsroom a few weeks ago on Freedom Day. Because this one person is saying, like, you must celebrate our freedom. Look how far we've come, whatever. I said, okay, 55% of us are living in poverty. Who must celebrate? So is majority of the country is poor. So that means that as a whole, we should be considered a poor, struggling country. But you want us to celebrate. And so I think the same about the DA and the Western Cape. Most of the Western Cape is living in poverty. Yeah. Most of Cape Town is living in either informal settlements or in townships. So Cape Town is a city where almost everybody lives in informal settlements or townships. Why does it get the title of the best run province? For who? Because majority of people are living in informal settlements or townships. So you're putting the label of best run province for the minority of people living here.
Yeah.
Because you can talk about places like Constantia or Camps Bay with populations of like 5,000 and 20,000, but Mitchell's Plain has 1 million people.
Yeah.
Khayelitsha, I think, has going on 1.5 to 2.
Yeah.
And the city's only 4 million people. So between those two areas, you have most of the city.
Yeah.
But with the best run.
For who?
Do you know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. Like if you have 4 kids and 3 of them are sick, and you're like, no, my family's healthy. Who in your family? You know what I mean? You're talking about the one child.
Yeah.
So that's how I see. We're celebrating too soon, friends.
Yeah.
We still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah. No, and it's good that you're having this type of conversations because I think, again, the youth, we are, in a culture of social media and everybody wants to be an influencer. Nobody really wants to do the hard work. It takes a select few of people to actually stand up and make these conversations a priority. The fact that you're born in 91 and you're doing this it speaks volumes. That you actually like authentically want to see change come about. But like for youngsters out there, what would you say they should do? Like if they don't have like the courage that you have, because I'm sure you are under threat on your DMs on a daily basis. I don't think this is for everyone.
Yeah. There's a lot happening in the background. I think the youth are a lot more ready and willing to almost I said vote for change, to push for change than we think they are. Listen, what do you call them? The AMA 2000s. I wouldn't mess with him.
What are they? Gen Z.
Gen Z, the AMA 2000s.
Yeah, they are a new batch of like.
I would not mess with him.
They don't give a shit.
Because they've grown up like second generation apartheid trauma. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like for them, my brother's, I suppose, on the border of Gen Z and millennial. He's gonna hate me for saying this, but he's watched his parents struggle to make it financially. He's seen his grandparents, struggle to make it financially. Then he's seen me have to freaking hustle 6, 7, 5 different ways just to be okay. And he's like, this is this nonsense. Yeah. This is not life.
Yeah.
And so that's what they've grown up seeing. And so when the conversation comes about the situation has given birth to a leftist movement.
Yeah.
And you can consider a leftist movement whatever you want to, but I see it as a movement that is opposed to the current state of the system.
Yeah.
And so they've grown up living it and seeing it 3 generations down the line, looking at the future, and they're like, are you nuts? They look at like what jobs offer them, and they're like, this is crazy. And so when people come along and say you want to nationalize mind, you want to nationalize land, you want to do X, Y, and Z, they're like, because this has not been working.
Yeah.
Not for centuries. And so I think the youth are very aware or becoming very aware of their circumstances, more so than the previous generation because of their access to technology, those who are fortunate enough to have them.
Yeah.
And so they become radicalized very quickly, which is a good thing, because the slower it takes to radicalize somebody, the slower change is going to take.
Yeah.
So where we are the pioneers of having these conversations for our generation, for them this is standard procedure.
Yeah.
They're like, don't talk to me about this capitalist nonsense. Whereas my dad, he still thinks communism is a bad word. You know what I
I
mean?
think we were all kind of raised with that communism is bad. The socialist state of
Yeah.
everything needs to be split and shared equally. Because
Yeah.
I think the capitalist will argue that it kind of demotivates the worker. Because why must one person be have his own? It will like kind of take down the creativity of like the genius, or everyone might just lax down and become more lazy.
I don't know. I think people who are and look, going to business school is going to like capitalist education boot camp. Like the only thing you get taught there is the profit motive, and you must keep expenses as low as possible. Like why in hell would you pay somebody more when you can pay them less?
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing you learn at business school. And so I think the younger generation are learning somehow, I don't even know how, because the education system teaches you in line with capitalist principles, but somehow they are learning that they should be paid what they need. And socialism is you can still have innovative scenarios, and you can still have creativity without threatening somebody's basic needs.
Yeah.
Like you can still have that.
Yeah.
People are still going to be creative, even if you feed them.
Of
Give them a place to live. But you know what I mean? Like capitalism tells you, you need to take away the motive. What motive, guys?
I always find that it's a select few that push this narrative. Like those obviously who own corporate and business and
the middle class.
I guess they furthered it. They kind of put the
And look, I would even go as far as like saying, these millionaire CEOs, even they're middle class. They think they're not, but
people when they think middle class, they think like actually the person that's earning like 30K a month.
So we look at it in terms of means of production, and so I know means of production is like this and this is why I make the content I do, to kind of take the mist away from these terms. Means of production means who owns or controls the ability to make couches, chairs, to pull mines out of the earth. Who owns that? And so capitalism says means of production can be owned by one individual or group of individuals or a family, but they can own it. Communism, or sometimes socialism says that the people can own it. The people who work in the mine should own the mine and determine what the salaries are, determine what the pricing is, determine what it gets sold for, determine who has a say in it. That's what socialism. And communism is then the state would own it, and they would hopefully distribute everything equally. Yeah. Right. And so we've been on the far end of the spectrum for a long time now, which is capitalism. And so we always need to look at it less on who makes what and more on who owns the means of production. Yeah. And right now the means of productions are owned by like families and old rich white men.
Yeah. I'm reading the Anton Rupert book at the moment just for Yeah. And it always like fascinates me because I think I'm in the book, I think they like in the 1700s or whatever, where his family ends up in Graafrenet, and there was a majority actually colored populace at the time there. And it sometimes just like annoys me to think that like colored people have still not kind of made that much progress in the world. Like, in terms of, again, like you say, owning land. And I remember, again, as an actor going to an audition and for a guy that drives a Ferrari, and a casting director telling me in 2010, come on, Anton, when do you see a Ferrari being driven by a colored? I remember that being told to me back then. And it's annoying, because for us to get ahead, it's really tough. Like, again, I look at the prime properties and places that is more given away to foreigners on the Atlantic seaboard, and places that most of us, our lifetime, will never be able to purchase or see. How do you correct something like that?
I think we need to stop selling off our land. It's one of the
but it's only the foreigners that can afford it.
It's one of the problems I have with our constitution, where it says South Africa belongs to all who live in it. No, but you can't sell it to everybody.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
But that's colonialism for you. It is made like that.
So it's still a thing. Like we always think of colonialism as something that is like something that has happened before, but it's happening as we speak. Is that what
so
you're
you know
saying?
all the happenings in Hout Bay? In Imizamayetu, where the police are trying to take down shacks.
Yes, they were taking,
Yeah, that's prime property. They're trying to sell that.
So they're moving these people that,
they want
that
to
have
move the
been
people
living there
because they want to
forever.
sell it. They want to develop the land and they want to sell it off to people. They don't want to develop those informal settlements here. They don't want to give them infrastructure. They want to get them out because it's good real estate.
To sell to who?
So there was a survey done by our friends in Blue. They did a survey, but obviously they only surveyed the people who lived in the area, and you can imagine who mostly lives in Hout Bay.
Yeah.
Not in the poor side, in the wealthy side. And
Yeah.
they were like, no, they don't want these informal settlements. They want it to be taken down, the whole 9 yards. I'm not going to quote it because I don't have the author and the article in my mind right now. But there had been a few names of foreign investment firms who wanted to already purchase property and were willing to invest even while there were people there. So that's why there's this periodic push. And that's also why, there's fishing licenses. Because lots of the Kali community who live in Hout Bay fish for a living.
Our people used to be fishermen. We used to fish. We used to earn a living wage on it. And then all of a sudden, some contracts were drawn up and now you can take 3 fish out of the sea.
Yeah, so they implemented quotas.
And there's more drugs in our areas in that places now more than ever. It's like, let's keep them docile.
Yeah. So there's a very active push to keep people poor, obviously, and then there's also a very active push to keep black and colored people divided.
I've seen that.
Yeah, there is. There's this whole like, what's this thing called? This First Nation movement. Even the term Khoisan is a made-up term by Leonard
I've always
Schultz.
struggled with that because a lot of people that I know, family and otherwise, colored people that I know, they hang on to this idea that they are of Khoisan lineage, so they are the first people. But again, like I did my that, what is it? It's not called 23andMe, but it's like DNA analysis, and like mine was all over the show, but it wasn't actually. I always thought it might be Khoisan by virtue of what is told to me, like Dutch Khoisan, but it was like more West African more than anything.
So there's like no such thing as Khoisan.
Khoi and San.
Yes, but not like that's like saying Zulu Xhosa.
Yes.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
It's just a made up overarching term, and then they like threw it on colored people. So there's that, and I think that you are gonna find more Khoi DNA among Xhosa people than colored people, but colored people are not ready to hear that because that then calls their identity into question.
Yeah, which is already quite a big problem for us.
But we did have an identity. We were called Afrikaners, like from before the Afrikaner nationalist movement. That's when we start being called colored.
Because they started calling us colored in 1948?
A little bit before. But so the Afrikaner nationalist movement started with the Afrikaner Bond. That then started in, I think, 1899 and then shut down in somewhere after the Anglo-Boer War. Also another hint, Anglo-Boer War, not Anglo-Afrikaner.
Yeah.
That's because we would be considered Afrikaners.
And they were Boer.
Yes.
They weren't Afrikaner.
Yes. So after the Boer War in 1902, then there was the Treaty of Vereniging, right? It was in Dutch. They wanted the language that the treaty was written in English because it was between the Boer and the Dutch. But one of the stipulations was that they must be taught in Dutch. They were still speaking Dutch at the time. Yeah. The language that we spoke, Afrikaans, the way we speak it, was considered Low Dutch.
Yes.
They didn't want the language, they didn't want the identity, none of it. It only came post the Anglo-Boer War with the Afrikaner nationalist movement.
So was our identity stolen?
Yeah.
So I want to get back to why they keep colored and black people separated, like what the importance of that is. But also I want to know is, do you agree with us calling ourselves colored then? How do you feel about that? Because it's not really something that we a label we gave ourselves. It was kind of put on us, and it still says that on my birth certificate. It says colored, but
so a white lady came in my comment section and she said, I hear everything you're saying about like the identity being stolen. And she was like, so what does that mean for me? And I was like, that's your journey to embark on, because colonialism is not pretty and it's not clean. And because she was like, okay, if I'm not Afrikaner, what am I, Boer? And I was like, yeah, you could call yourself Boer. You could trace your ancestry and call yourself Dutch. You could find German. I don't know. You could call yourself ethnically whatever you want to. Colors don't have the same opportunity. And so obviously we formed an attachment to the term colored. I don't know if collectively we would want to take the term Afrikaner back. I just think it's important that we know it's ours. Because I think for a long time, we accept the term colored because we feel we didn't have any other identity, and the term colored was given to us, whereas Afrikaner was one we formed for ourselves from the 1600s, actually, just before the 1700s.
So us mixed people were always called Afrikaners.
We're always called Afrikaners. A guy named Oude Ram Afrikaner. He was the first people to call him and himself and his family Afrikaners. There was actually quite a bit of fighting between him and a guy named Petrus Pinaar, and they fought and they were chased out. That's why you'll find some Afrikaners in Namibia and Northern Cape, because they fought here and then scattered. So it was always Afrikaner for mixed ethnicity of African descent. It has always been Afrikaner until very recently. And I mean as recently as like possibly around the time your grandmother was born or grandfather was born, if they're still alive. Not like new. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I understand what I'm trying to say. Sorry. I understand our attachment to the term colored. If as colored people we want to keep it, that's completely fine. I don't think we should be told how to move past this trauma and what label to accept on ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we were Afrikaners for sure. We can still claim it if we want to. I'm just not going to call a Boer Afrikaner. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But I think post-apartheid or during apartheid, there was obviously this, group areas acting, everybody was in one space. And then there was even further mixing of cultures and ethnicities and so forth. So if we want to keep it, that's fine. I don't think anybody should tell us any differently. I just think it's very important that we understand our African roots and that there was an identity before apartheid. There was even an identity during the first origins of people from other countries into the region.
Yeah.
That there was a name we had for ourselves, that we took pride in, that we had chosen for ourselves. And if you want to choose this one colored, that's fine. I just think it's important that we know that.
Yeah, I think that's valuable. I've never thought about that. I've never known that. Us as Afrikaners, that's interesting. And then just getting back to like why keep us so divided? Because I do sense a big, like when you go on Twitter, which is now X, whatever, and you can see the fight between colored and black constantly. And like...
have you read, I think it's William Lynch. It was his speech by the river of Virginia Banks or something like that. He made a speech and he was like, separate the short from the tall, separate the green eyes from the blue eyes, separate the house slave from the field slave.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing.
Yes.
You just separate people based on any physical difference that you can see. And so, because we know lots of colored people who speak Xhosa and Xhosa people who speak Afrikaans, because there was always that mixing. And so 1948 helped to separate that, but there was always that bond between the groups. I don't even know if we would be considered separate groups before 1948. I don't know if that would be the case. Anyway, it's helpful to split people up. It's helpful to divide people by not just how they look, but by economic opportunities. Okay, all of you can be cleaners, all of you can be nurses and teachers, all of you can be mine workers. It's helpful to separate people like that, because then you can control people easier. You report to me. Same as US house slave, field slave. House slave must make sure the field slave stays in line. You do that, I'll make sure you have privileges, and I'll make sure your family has privileges. You'll be able to be in the house. You don't have to do hard labor in the field.
Yeah.
Okay, you'll be a supervisor on site, and you won't have to lay bricks.
Yeah.
But then you need to make sure, otherwise.
What is the solution to that?
Equality.
Between the two races.
Equality. You need to push for equality, because you see, it's difficult to have an equal voice when people aren't living equally. It should be the case, but it's difficult. You know, like
Yeah.
it's a very unfortunate saying, but one of the things they say, nobody listens to a poor person.
It's true though.
You know what I mean? And that's the nature of the society that we live in. But when you push for a more equitable society, when you push for everybody to have their basic needs met, and you're like, talk nonsense to me, man.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lie. You're not any better than me.
Yeah.
You just managed to be in a situation where you got to be paid more. And so I think that division stems from the inequality that we experience. Cape Town is still very much fourth year.
Fourth year.
Yeah, white, Indian, colored, black.
Oh, fully.
But still structured like that.
Fully.
And I'm not saying that colored people...
In Joburg, you go to Sandton, black, white. If you go to Four Ways, Randburg, it's so integrated. Which is, again, also one of the reasons I liked the progressiveness of it when I was there. The fact that for the first time when I went there 10 years ago or so, I didn't feel out. I felt very included. I felt things that I never felt in my life growing up in Cape Town. I always kind of felt as an outsider, or I had to feel apologetic about my energy going into certain spaces.
So just on that, I think people in colored people in Cape Town often feel particularly marginalized because the face of our politics is black, but black people in Cape Town don't feel that way. You know what I mean? The people in Khayelitsha, Langa, Gugulethu, they don't see the benefits. And so I think often what helps keep black and colored people divided is the perception that because there are few that are benefiting, that the black majority are somehow better off.
Yeah.
And that helps keep, because the DA doesn't, I think only 70% of people in Cape Town are white. So even if the DA got every white person, in the province, every white person in the province to vote for him, it still wouldn't be enough. They needed the colored vote.
Yeah.
So that's by design, to keep black and colored people separate, because you need that buffer class to give you a bump. And because colored people are the majority in the province, it's beneficial to have that divide.
To have them on your side as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So and no other place in the country are colored people the majority except in the Western Cape. We are, I think, like 42, and black people are slightly under at 38%.
Where?
In the Western Cape, yeah.
We have more colored people in the Western Cape than black.
Yes, but not in Cape Town. In Cape Town, we are 65 black and 35 colored.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So in the province, majority colored, city, majority black.
Because I also note there's like an inconsistency and a prejudice towards like who we allow into Cape Town. You know, like some would be encouraged to move to Cape Town and some would be discouraged or frowned upon if there was, for say, moving here from the Eastern Cape. But yet there are certain forums and groups that encourage certain people to move here. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think I do.
Like
it's tricky. There's always been this like kind of push to protect Cape Town from outsiders, or the Western Cape from outsiders, but it's the same game.
Is it?
Yeah, unfortunately. But just on the division between black and colored people, because it's beneficial. That's the long and the short of it. It's typical house slave, field slave tactics.
Yeah. Wild. Fascinating stuff, man. So where to from here? Like, I mean, what would be your state of the nation, like, kind of assessment of, in an ideal world, like for Darren, like what would you like to see happen?
In an ideal world, I would like to see socialist parties take power and unapologetically meet people's basic needs: housing, healthcare, clothing, education, food.
Okay.
Just
you're trying to stay clear from saying who it is that you would vote for, right?
I think people can figure it out when I say socialist parties. There aren't very many.
Okay.
There are very, very, very few.
The red caps.
So there's the red caps, there's the ATMs, PAC.
Okay, cool.
Those are pretty much the only three. Some people would argue that MK is a socialist party. I'm not convinced just yet.
Okay. That's Zuma's party, right? What do you think about his son? I was watching a podcast of his son recently. I mean, he made some valid points. I mean, everybody talks well until they need to put things into application. But like in terms of, for example, I kind of, why is every single political leader or like president like over the age of 70, 80 when they're on their way out? like can a young guy not take that role? Can Darren not come in to run for president because he's born in 91? He's gonna be excluded or.
These are the people who were.
Why does it always have to be an old guy? Like
these are the people who were sitting around the table in the 80s and 90s.
That's why.
Yeah. These deals and arrangements were written before I was born.
And then your perception on Duduzane, on Jacob's son?
I don't know. I don't know too much about him. He's not said anything that's made me take an interest in him, which is probably it is what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know too much about him.
All right. So, ideal world, more socialist.
Ideal world, just get people healthcare, food, housing, all that kind of stuff. And then we can make the additional push for equality, living wage, that kind of stuff. People are struggling, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like 55% of people in poverty, that should bring the whole country to a standstill, but we just like...
It's funny how like in COVID, all of a sudden we have 500 billion and everybody could stay at home for 2-3 years. But like you can't like do a national lockdown for a year to I don't know, to stop things like...
So we can... How much time do we have left? You want to get into this?
Yeah, we can go.
So the government can issue as much currency as they want. They just need to tax it back. And there'll be no money left among the poor because they'll spend it all on everything they need. There'll only be money left among the wealthy.
Yeah.
They must just tax it back from them. So they can issue as much currency as they need. I've used this example when I made a video. I said it's like a carnival when you issue the coupons.
Yeah.
So you issue coupons, everybody gets their rides. You issue more coupons, everybody gets their rides. If you need somebody to help with something, you give them some coupons so that they can fix whatever machine broke. So his compensation will be the coupons he got, and he'll fix the rides and he'll spend it on the coupons. But now if there's extra laying around, you just make sure you tax it back. So the government isn't limited by how much tax we pay them. They can issue 500 billion, they can issue $1 trillion, it doesn't matter. They just need to tax it back.
Yeah.
So yeah, they can do that if they want to.
So I feel like there's so many things like they can do that they're not doing. Obviously we know this, but like, yeah, like just even violence in the Cape Flats, obviously because we come from those areas, that's like the first point of reality for me is that I'd like to see things change there, but I'm starting to think that they like it there.
It's funny to me that they can't do anything about violence on the Cape Flats, but the premier said he was going to arrest Putin last year.
Bruh.
So
how are you going to arrest the head of a nuclear state, but you can't take down said numbers gang?
Now, you see, this is why, this is where my conversation about politics gets ugly, because I'm like, don't take us for a gat, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you have that kind of smoke for Putin coming here that you think you can use your leap officers to arrest him, but you can't do anything about the Cape Flats.
Like, keep that energy.
And
do something with it.
And you grew up in Belhar, you said, right?
Yeah.
You grew up in Belhar. I grew up in and around Manenberg. I know already that the only thing the police are there to do is to keep the gang fight within the area.
Yeah.
They don't get involved. They keep it in. So there's if they want, again, what my late mentor and friend said, if they wanted to, they would.
Yeah.
And I think that's been one of the most frustrating things about putting this information out there for myself as well. So
do you ever fear for your own safety? Like,
I do, but
if I die, I die.
It's like one of those things, man. It's like if you were to have a child, you love that child, right? You care about that child. You would do anything for that child. Same for any of your friends if they had a child, right? So how far does it go before you stop caring?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like what's the limit of your empathy and compassion? So I definitely like fear for my life, but it's like if I care about somebody else's child as much as I would care about a family members or friends, you have to act like it.
Yeah.
I don't consider myself to be any, like, my life is no more or less important than a Biko or a Hani or Ashley Creel or whoever else was taken out. And I'm not saying I've done anything remotely close to what they've done, but it's like if they were willing to take a hit for speaking out, like, we don't have a luxury of being quiet about it. Because there's one thing to read the stats and it's another thing to see it every day.
Yeah. My brother, we commend you. I think you're a solid person for vocalizing what you believe in. I think we need more people in the youth or people in general that has that much bravery. So yeah, man, thanks for coming out. Or stupidity, bruh. Time will tell.
Yeah.
We cancel anything bad happening that, you know. But yeah, thanks again for coming out. We
Thank
appreciate
you very much for having me.
Yeah, keep fighting the good fight.
Definitely.
Cheers.